Welcome, and thank you for joining us today on a presentation about the Green Line Extension Project. Hello, my name's Terry McCarthy, and I work on the MBTA's Green Line Extension Project, better known as GLX, and I work as the Deputy Program Manager for Stakeholder Engagement. Today's agenda will first begin with the introduction as well as a safety moment. All MBTA meetings begin with a safety moment, and no matter how large or how small the meeting is, we always spend a little time in regards to safety. Then we'll talk about the project's background, about our public outreach efforts, and then we'll have a question and answering session. On the GLX project, Safety Together, we have a combined safety culture of MBTA personnel and the contractor's personnel. The picture you see in the slide was taken the very first day of major work on the project. Each month we meet quarterly, and this is a very serious meeting where actually a project stand down occurs. No work is done on the project while we're meeting early in the morning to discuss safety. To date, we've not had any type of life-threatening or impairing injuries on the GLX project. Even at public meetings, we have a safety moment that begins with the meeting. And the one I chose today was one that we had on cancer screening. And I'll just give you the quick highlights of that. Basically, adults are not getting their regular cancer screenings because of the COVID-19 pandemic issues. And about a third are not getting any type of regular medical care and alike during the pandemic. And we encourage the public to make contact with their healthcare professionals to review their total health care, as well as this subject of cancer screening. Cancer screening, if you delay it, you could possibly move into advanced stages of cancer. Early detection can prevent cancer and lead people to a cancer-free remission. So everyone should be conscious of that. And so this is the basic safety moment we would present at a public meeting. Like all projects, we've had to institute COVID-19 protocols. This took training on the new construction rules like face mask wearing and alike. We installed hand wash stations with actually running water for the construction workers to clean their hands. And in the winter, these stations had to be heated, and it's much more involved than simply putting some Perel sanitizer on your hands. We also had the employees receive medical screening. The MBTA had a facility about a mile away that anyone on the project could get a COVID-19 test. Also, we had an element of self-reporting. Basically, all construction workers, MBTA employees, contractor office employees have to fill out a daily self-certification checklist. And these are just a few of the things we've had to adjust. We even hired 2 safety officers just to monitor and be dedicated to the COVID-19 protocols. The genesis of the GLX project is rooted in the Central Artery Tunnel Project, better known as the Big Dig. The concept was the GLX project would offset vehicle congestion and improve air quality. as we move through this presentation, I will discuss more of those aspects. Next, we're going to review the project mapping, and I'll use the laser pointer to kind of describe the location of the Green Line Extension project. On the map, you'll see that the Red Line transit service runs along here, terminates at Alewife Station in Cambridge, and then running along is in this direction is the Orange Line, which heads towards Wellington Station, and the Green Line, which ran to Lechmere Station, is now going to be a relocated station on the Green Line extension. There's two branches in the Green Line extension, the Union branch, which runs to Union Square in Somerville, Mass., and the Medford branch, which heads north to the city of Medford and terminates at Tufts University. There are other maps in the presentation today that contain more details and information in regards to stations. So now I'd like to discuss a few of the Green Line Extension quick facts. We're constructing 7 light rail stations. They are broken out as the relocation of Lechmere Station. There's 5 stations being built on the Medford branch and 1 station being built on the Union Square branch. In order to finance this project, we entered into a full funding grant agreement with FTA and had to conform to all environmental commitments and the scope that was approved by FTA. This project includes a multi-use community path. It also provided for the procurement of 24 light rail vehicles. They're known as our number 9 cars, and the construction of a vehicle maintenance facility. This was necessary because the closest facility is at Riverside in Newton, which is about 14 miles away, and that would be a little too far to bring a vehicle that needed repairs. And the program budget is $2.3 billion. In reviewing the project goals and benefits, which these goals, as I spoke about earlier, go back to the commitments from Central Artery Tunnel Project, or the Big Dig. One important thing in improving local and regional air quality and traffic congestion, the GLX project was designed with no parking lots at any of the stations. It was designed to service pedestrians and cyclists only. And to show you how much of a change to the area it will deliver, 20% of the city of Somerville residents right now are within walking distance of rail transit, being either the red or orange line. With the GLX project being put in place, 80% of the population in Somerville will be able to walk to a transit station. Also, in related to, the economic benefits, there are all kinds of what I refer to as transit-oriented development projects that are being developed solely because there is light rail transit service to the area. The project history has been a little dubious. Prior to the present effort that we're making now, we refer to earlier efforts as episode 1. Originally, it was a CMGC delivery type method. And from about 2012 to 2015, the project was being developed in different packages, but it was also climbing in costs. And there's different numbers, but close to $3 billion. So the MBTA halted the project in late 2015 and looked at a redesign of the project and also moving towards the concept of a design build project, which we actually had to get legislative approval to do. And in May 2016, the redesign team did a fantastic job, and the MBTA Board of Directors approved a reprocurement of the project. And in November 2016, we began the procurement process. And on December 20th, 2017, the GLX present contractor, was given their notice to proceed. At that point, we referred to the present GLX project as Episode 2. And it's a little bit humorous, but it actually is an easy way to keep issues separate. One of the concepts that we utilized in the design build process to control our costs, we had 6 additive options. And basically, if the contractor could commit to doing these options, they would earn more points in their selection of their companies. So we added items like additional elevators, an art program, and 2 of the designs options, 4 and 5, were related to the community path. And it also allowed us to put station canopies at all the stations. If you're familiar with our system along Beacon Street and Comm Ave, those stations are just open to the air. There's no canopies. We wanted to provide canopies to keep people out of the rain and the elements a little bit. It's still a pretty open system. As I discussed earlier, I have a little more comprehensive mapping and would like to now begin kind of an overview of the present project. This map has a little more animation to it, and we can kind of go through the stations and layouts a little more slowly and in detail. So the new Lechmere station has relocated across Monsignor O'Brien Highway, and it is now an elevated station. It's the only elevated station in the system, and that was required to meet up with the existing East Cambridge Viaduct. And as you see the red line, we come to the branch line to Union Square Station. Interesting, there's a large transit-oriented development there with a 22-story tower, probably less than 1,000 feet from the station. And part of that development project is bicycle cages to encourage people to ride their cycles to the station from Cambridge. And this is the location of our vehicle maintenance facility. I have some pictures to show you later in the presentation, but it was a real advantage to put that vehicle maintenance facility right as the branches break off. We were very lucky. It took acquiring quite a few buildings to make it happen. Then we progressed to the East Somerville Station. There is a TOD project going along there, and restaurants very close to the station. The next station is Gilman Square, and it has an interesting construction element. The Somerville High School project sat and does sit above the Gilman Square station, to the point where the high school in the city of Somerville have decided to put an elevator in to get people from the high school campus down to where the station is in the alignment. Magoon Square, heavily surrounded by numerous apartment buildings, and also a place where the community path interfaces. Ball Square, which is a large commerce center in the city of Somerville, and it's also on the Medford line. And then at Tufts University, we have the Medford Tufts station. That was actually a change from the College Ave station, and it makes it a lot easier to designate where the train terminates. Also shown on this map is the community path alignment. One interesting fact, this path ties into the Somerville existing community path, which ties into the Minuteman community path that goes all the way out to Bedford, Mass. It provides a connection from Bedford, Mass right into downtown Boston and along the Charles River. So it's really an important connection that's being made. I brought this map back just for a moment, just to show how the strategic location of this line, the GLX extension lines are going the different branches. There's one important thing I wanted to point out. We did not have to take any residential houses or alike to build the project, because we utilized the existing corridor of the commuter rail. This is the Fitchburg line, which is where the Union Square branch runs. And then you can't quite see it, but up at the top of the slide here, this is the Lowell line. It's also known as the New Hampshire line, which heads north. By being able to build in each of these corridors, it was really a design coup, because it's hard to make any project go forward if you are required to take away residential properties. As I just discussed, the alignment of the construction sequencing took quite a bit, because the New Hampshire line and Fitchburg line corridors were not wide enough to accept the new light rail transit lines. These diagrams, sometimes I know some of us are engineers call them cartoons, but the original configuration that we were dealing with in making the Green Line extension work, this is the original configuration, just basically a sloped angle on either side. Right here was a rail line. We used to call it Lead 8. It was in disrepair and wasn't being used. So the first thing we did, fall of 2018, was excavate this area in order to shift the commuter rail over in order to provide drainage work and retaining wall work. In looking at the next construction sequencing, the interim condition We had moved the commuter rail away from the east side. And I should reference this. This side of the alignment was considered east. This side of the alignment was considered west. And we are looking north as through the cut through. Anyway, the original commuter rail was located in this location where the backhoe is, and we moved them over to the other side of the alignment closer to the west wall area. So in the summer of 2020, we had completed our work in this area and were able to move the commuter rail back to its original and permanent location, with the drainage work being completed and retaining walls installed, which allowed us to start work on the west side of the alignment to start building the light rail transit system. And looking at the next construction sequencing, between 2020 and 2021, we worked in earnest on the west side of the alignment, basically doing drainage work and other utility work and installing our retaining walls. So at the end of 2021, we should have the Green Line extension in full revenue service. And as you can see, we'll also, in this diagram, you'll see that the community path will also be in place. So this is the end and final condition. Now, just after looking at those cut-through sequencing, here are some pictures of the commuter rail track being shifted to almost the center of the alignment to give us space to work on the east side of the alignment. So April 2018, this configuration is the original track layout. You can see how the slopes are in place as we looked at. And then May 2020, you can see such a varied condition. This is the relocated tracks. And in the June 2020 photo, you will see the excavation work continuing on and track bed areas being installed. There were many construction staging challenges. This perspective and picture is taken from exactly the same location. So October 2018, commuter rail is in its original configuration. You can see how close abutters are to those slopes. And then in the second picture, March 2020, you can see the level of equipment and commuter rail lines that had been relocated. And you'll see we had track outages where the commuter rail was able to go to single track while we constructed pretty extensive drainage lines throughout the alignment. So just kind of an overview on the status of the project. Construction is approximately 73% complete. Just on a side note, which is not on the slide, about 98% of the design work is also complete. So we're pretty much in full construction mode at present. The revenue service date is targeted to December 2021. I do have to say, with COVID-19 impacts, both in supply chain and labor, have been difficult. we've had to resequencing schedules and stuff due to the supply chain issues. And labor's been tough. If a crew member is diagnosed with COVID, um, a 12-man crew would be required to quarantine um, for 14 days. So that did cause a little bit of a problem. There's 650 plus or minus contract personnel on site. At many of our public meetings, people will ask us, well, where are you going to be working? You know, well, we're working everywhere. So we put this diagram together on what type of work was going along on the alignment. And as you can see, from bridge abutments, utilities, retaining walls, station work, track, the vehicle maintenance facility. On this project, all of these elements are coming up and out of the ground all at once along the alignment. In discussing project progress, there are risks that we, deal with, and this list is certainly a lot longer. And the biggest risk we're dealing with is the COVID-19 labor and supply issues. The contractor and deployment of resources, as I talked about 650, I think there may be as much as 700 workers out there. That's a lot of resources for the city of Boston area, and many of our workers are coming from different parts of the country. And we're heading into a phase of system integration and testing. It's involved with testing and commissioning of track, signal, communication items, and alike. And we deal with winter weather issues. Fortunately for us, this past winter did not cause any hastening to the work that we were doing. I'd like to just move into construction highlights and review some of the work and the status of that work. To construct our vehicle maintenance facility, we needed to purchase some large commercial buildings which ran along this area. Actually, they predominantly were owned by MS Walker, which is a liquor distribution company, and they also made some of their own products and bottling. And this is what the area looked like in November 2018. As you can see, this is the completed site demolition work that occurred. We had removed all the buildings. The work in the picture you're observing is we had to bring the entire site up approximately 3 feet, which fortunately we were able to reuse material once it was environmentally cleared from areas along the alignment. We did have to bring in some other fill, but we were able to reuse as much as possible. This picture was taken by our cameras. We have cameras that are not video, but take photographs about every half hour or so. And this is the vehicle maintenance facility. One of the advantages, it ties right into our rail yard, and it has a loop track that goes around the building, and on the back side of the building, vehicles can exit into a small rail yard and then proceed around the building into the much larger rail yard. and can be prepared to go into revenue service. This is the interior of the vehicle maintenance facility. Just could point out a few of the key points on the interior. Right here, this large yellow beam is a monorail crane, which runs the full length of the facility. In this area, trains are brought in by a small cart type of system, because we cannot have any catenary lines in this area of the facility. And in the areas along this wall, we refer to that as bench space, in which it's a position at the T, a vehicle repairer would work on fastening or coming up with a part to fix. We are actually looking towards the back of the facility, and as you can see, the rail lines are in. In looking over in here, it's not 100% clear, but this is actually a pit area where the steel rails sit up on I-beam posts or columns. But it's a pretty impressive facility. This next picture is the Union Square station. As you can see, we are 90% or so complete with the station. The rail line, both inbound and outbound, is constructed, I believe, all the way to Leechmere Station, and we're continuing to move towards our revenue service at the end of the year. There's a tremendous amount of testing and commissioning that has to occur. And if you look at the end of the platform here, this is the Union Square signal bungalow, and that will take quite a few days to test out and make sure it's communicating not only with the switches and elements on the Green Line extension, but it also has to communicate with our Operation Control Center, which is about 3 miles away. This slide is a picture of the Leechmere Station, and as you can see, as I talked about, the rail has been installed. It still needs ballast to be installed. Also, the platform is in various stages of the yellow tactile strip and other areas that need to be completed. We can see the North Head House in this picture, and there's 2 elevator shafts located here. The Leechmere Station is the only elevated station, and it has 2 elevators in its North Head House and 1 elevator in its South Head House. This is a picture from underneath the Leechmere Station. We're looking north, and you can see how close this viaduct section comes to the apartment buildings in the area. Many times we had to close off sidewalks just to put up the safety walkways to keep the work going. This next picture is of our Red Bridge area. We have a traction power station called the Red Bridge Traction Power Station, but this is a good picture of the viaduct areas that we've had to construct. If you look in this lower area, this is part of the yard track I talked about that sits in front of the VMF building, and the viaduct area here I'll probably get another picture to show you. It looks like a roller coaster from the different elevations and slopes that it has throughout the viaduct area. This is the community path which runs through that Red Bridge viaduct area. It's actually the highest structure. It not only goes over the Green Line extension lines, but it also goes over the Fitchburg commuter rail. And it is the highest point, and from the top of the community path viaduct, it's about 60 feet down to grade. Next, we're going to review the East Somerville station, which, if you know the area off of 93 Sullivan Square, and this is Washington Street that goes under our rail lines, and this is the McGrath Highway Bridge in the background. And as you can see, similar to the Union Square station, we're quite along pretty far with the station. And this building here is the communication center for all the bungalows tying in and communication going back to our 45 High Street Command Center. And right here where you see this person, this is the community path and station entrance area. This continues on until you get to the viaduct area where you cross over the Green Line extension lines, as well as the Fitchburg commuter rail. This is the Gilman Square station, which I've mentioned before. It's had some unique challenges. Very large retaining walls. The community path actually will go along on top of the retaining wall, and the Somerville High School actually has another retaining wall along that. And like I discussed, the city of Somerville is actually putting in an elevator system to be able to get people down to the level of the Gilman Square station. As you can see, the canopies coming along. These are power conduits that are running through, and communication conduits. But I'd also like to point out this gray building here, two-story building, is a traction power substation. So it takes power from the local utilities and it transforms it into 600 volt DC power, which is utilized by our catenary line, and same with our third rail on the red and orange line. So DC power runs all the trains within this MBTA system. This next slide is in Gilman Square as well. The Gilman Square station is to our right, and you can't see it. This is known as the School Street Bridge. And one of the important things that we had to do with this bridge is actually extend it so we could have the light rail transit go underneath the bridge and widen it so it could handle both Green Line vehicles. Part of episode 1, as I mentioned earlier, had installed this pedestrian bridge as a mitigation measure, and at that time they were going to remove the entire bridge, which the bridge was fairly new, so there was really no need to do that. and that was some of the cost savings that we were able to um, move forward on, as we say, episode 2 of the present project. This next station we're going to take a look at is Ball Square, and our perspective right now is we would be standing at the station and we're looking towards the Broadway bridge. And as you can see, the original Broadway bridge only had enough room for the commuter rail trains to carry through. So an entire new bridge had to be constructed, and it was made longer and wider, as you can see here. It took approximately about a year to do all this work, and it was a significant mitigation issue to develop functional detours around this bridge. And this is the Ball Square station, and we're perched with a camera that's on an apartment building next to it. And you can see the Broadway bridge in this location. And right here is where the bridge was extended to allow the light rail transit vehicles to travel. As you can see, this station has its tactile strips, a final platform, and the canopy structure basically just needs its roof. Also, I'd like to point out in this picture is this building right here is another traction power substation. It's a Ball Square traction power substation. Once again, its main function is to provide DC power to the catenary line system, the overhead line that runs the Green Line light rail vehicles. This is a picture of the Medford Tufts station, which, as I mentioned earlier, terminates at Tufts University. It is, being constructed approximately 25 to 30 feet below Boston Ave, and when done, will service Tufts University, and part of all this area, Tufts University has a development project called the Cummings Center, and there's a pedestrian bridge that will tie the Cummings Center into Boston Ave and onto the front entrance of this station. Now I'm going to talk about our public outreach effort. As you saw in those pictures, we are literally within 5 feet of people's backyard along this corridor. So we pay very close attention in keeping the public informed and updated about the project. We have many public information channels. It's structured around basically general public meetings. We have 2 to 4 each year. Most years we've had at a minimum 3. We also have a community working group that we meet every month with. We've had, as of this slide, 38 consecutive months meeting. This group is a great group. We have 14 community members in the group, and we consistently have at least 10 or 12 that attend the meetings. It's a bit of an ebb and flow. We structured it so one month the meeting's at 8 to 10:30, and the next month it's 4 to 5:30. That way members can choose what works into their schedule best. Also, along with the public meetings and prior to the public meetings, We provide legislative briefings to the legislators, bringing them up to speed, and then inviting them to speak at the public meeting. We meet with municipalities weekly. We have a weekly traffic meeting, which we can gather all the municipalities, the MassDOT District 4 and District 6, as well as any of the large developers in the area. We all talk about the work that we're doing and work out closures and detours that don't affect each other. And sometimes there's a piggyback relationship where one is closing a lane and another is going to do work within that closure. Then monthly, we also meet with our emergency responders, police, fire, and ambulance. We do a check-in. We also tell them how the work site has changed. So where a gate was that they could access, in 2 or 3 months, that gate is going to go away, and we're going to set up a gate on another area. Then abutters and local businesses, we talk to them on a daily basis as needed. We also have third-party agreements in which the third party has a financial interest. Actually, I shouldn't say it that way. They have entered into agreements with the MBTA for use of their property and construction easements, and we speak with them on a day-to-day basis. And we meet monthly with our federal and state oversight groups. So kind of a lot of information is being discussed constantly. This is a picture of our community working group prior to the pandemic. And we used to meet in a large conference room on the GLX project. I'm sitting right here as the deputy program manager, and to my left is John Dalton, who is the program manager for the project. The community working group members sit at the tables, and the meeting is open to the public who are sitting kind of around the edge of the room. The community working group is not a voting body, but one thing we make clear with the public, that the meeting is for discussion and work with the community working group. And we, at the end of the meeting, if someone would like to ask a question of the group, they're certainly allowed to. But for the bulk of the meeting, it's dedicated to the community working group discussions. As I mentioned earlier, there are folks working on the project who are actually all over from the country. And we put together the GLX Community Connection team. So the young people, to encourage the young people on the job to get involved with the communities of Cambridge, Somerville, and Medford. So we do food drives for the local homeless shelters. We have Project Soup in Somerville, the Family Network in Medford, and in Cambridge, there's a group, Youth on Fire, which runs a shelter for 16 to 22-year-olds, with some of their residents actually attending college. So it's a great program, and we provide meals and toiletries and things like that. At Christmas time, the MBTA runs a program called Fill a Bus with toys, and we were big contributors to that effort. And now we can open it up to questions and answers. Thank you all for participating in the presentation today.